If love has started to confuse you more than it comforts you, there's usually a reason for that. Don't scroll away. Don't rush past this feeling. Stay here for a moment. If you've been carrying something unsettled inside you, but you can't fully explain why, stay here. If something feels slightly off, but every time you try to name it, you keep telling yourself, it's probably nothing. This space is for you. Not because you failed, not because you chose the wrong person, but because confusion in love can be one of the loneliest emotional experiences there is. It's lonely because it's quiet. There's no dramatic explosion, no clear betrayal, no obvious ending. Just a slow shift, a subtle change in tone, a small distance that grows gradually, a tension you can't quite measure. And because it's subtle, you question it. You wonder if you're imagining it. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You compare your relationship to others. You try to normalize what feels uncomfortable. You remind yourself that no relationship is perfect. But even after all that reasoning, the feeling doesn't fully leave. It lingers. It shows up in quiet moments. It follows you when you're alone. Confusion doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You still show up. You still respond. You still care. You still try to make it work. You still give the benefit of the doubt. But internally there's tension. A low, steady tension. It sits in your chest. It shows up in your thoughts. It makes you pause before speaking. You replay conversations in your mind. You reread messages searching for reassurance. You analyze small details. You notice response time. You notice when energy shifts. You notice when warmth feels different. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin adjusting yourself. You become more careful with your words, more patient than you normally would be, more understanding than feels natural. You hesitate before bringing something up. You shrink certain questions. You soften certain needs. You tell yourself, you don't want to create problems. You don't want to seem demanding. You don't want to lose something that still has potential. Not because you're weak, but because you want stability. You want reassurance. You want clarity. You want that early feeling of certainty back. And when clarity doesn't come, you start carrying the uncertainty alone. That's heavy, because confusion doesn't just create doubt about the relationship. It slowly creates doubt about yourself, about your instincts, about your expectations, about your worth. And when you start questioning your own perception, that's when love stops feeling safe. Most confusion in love begins in a simple place. Words say one thing, actions say another. At first, the difference seems small, easy to overlook, easy to explain. Someone tells you they care about you, and you want to believe that. But their efforts feels inconsistent. They say they value the relationship, but their presence feels uncertain. They say they want something real, but their actions don't quite match those words. And when that gap appears, your mind tries to close it. You begin searching for explanations. You tell yourself they're busy. You tell yourself they're stressed. You tell yourself they've been hurt before. You try to understand their behavior from every possible angle, because understanding feels safer than confronting uncertainty. But even when you explain everything logically, your body still feels unsettled. That feeling matters, because our minds can create stories to reduce discomfort, but our bodies notice patterns. Your nervous system notices when warmth becomes distance. It notices when attention becomes inconsistency. It notices when affection becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability creates tension. Not always dramatic tension. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it shows up as overthinking. Sometimes it shows up as quiet anxiety. Sometimes it shows up as a constant sense that you waiting for reassurance, waiting for consistency. waiting for the relationship to feel stable again. At first you question the situation. You wonder if something changed. You wonder if you misunderstood their intentions. But slowly, the focus begins to shift. Instead of questioning what's happening, you begin questioning yourself. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe this is normal. And every time you override your instinct, you move further away from your own clarity. Here's something important. Confusion is not weakness. It's not insecurity. It's not proof that you're too emotional. Confusion is a signal. It appears when something inside you is trying to understand a contradiction. Hope and unease, connection and distance, closeness and uncertainty. You care deeply, and yet something feels unsettled. You feel drawn toward the person, but something inside you feels unsure. That internal tension creates confusion because your heart wants to believe in the connection, but your instincts are noticing patterns that don't fully align. And when those two signals conflict, your system stays alert. You think about it more than you want to. Your mind revisits small details. You replay interactions. You search for meaning in small shifts. Not because you're obsessive, but because your mind is trying to understand something unclear. Human beings are wired to look for stability. When things feel consistent, we relax. When things feel predictable, we feel safe. But when patterns become inconsistent, our nervous system stays activated. It keeps asking quiet questions. What does this mean? Where is this going? Can I rely on this? Is this safe for me, emotionally? And when those questions have no clear answers, your mind keeps returning to them. Over time, that effort becomes exhausting. Not because you're overthinking, but because clarity is missing. Clarity is quieter than you think. It doesn't shout. It doesn't panic. It feels steady. It feels like your body can exhale. It feels like consistency. It feels like you don't have to decode everything. It feels like your questions are welcome. It feels like your needs don't make you too much. Clarity doesn't mean perfection. Every relationship has challenges. But clarity means the foundation feels stable. You know where you stand, and that creates emotional peace. If you don't feel that right now, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It simply means something deserves your attention. You don't need to solve everything tonight. You don't need to confront anyone immediately. You don't need to rush toward a decision. Just notice. Notice how you feel around this person. Notice whether your body relaxes or tightens. Notice whether you feel secure or uncertain. Clarity begins with awareness, not action. Awareness. If you've been carrying confusion quietly, you're not dramatic, you're not irrational, and you're not alone. You're allowed to want steadiness and love. You're allowed to want emotional safety. You're allowed to want peace. And sometimes, the first step toward that peace is simply being honest with yourself about what you're feeling. You don't need all the answers tonight. You just need the space to slow down and see things clearly. If this space helped you breathe a little easier, you're welcome to stay. You can subscribe for more.com, honest conversations about love, emotional pain, and self-worth. This is the Clarity Room, where confused hearts find clarity, a calm place in the middle of pain.